Awesome. So, hello everyone. My name is Marissa. I feel like I'm going to be saying that a lot today, but I will be moderating today's session. If you would like to turn on closed captions, please click on the CC button on the bottom of your screen. It will prompt a small menu, and you can select the subtitles option. And I will put that in the chat um, for everyone as well. We hope that today's event will serve many and that you are here with an open mind, heart, and good energy. Here at the College of Wooster, we do not condone any forms of bias, discrimination, harassment, and/or violence, and these expectations still stand in a virtual setting. If an individual were to harm another and/or violate the safety of another during this event, I and other members of the Align Committee are allowed to remove them from the meeting and report them to Align's Executive Committee, and this may affect ability to join future Align conferences. And if you as a participant are uncomfortable with anyone here due to violations of the previously stated, you may alert an Align committee member and we will make sure to take care of your concern. For your knowledge, this session will be recorded. Camryn Bragg is a senior biochemistry and molecular biology and Spanish double major at the College of Wooster. Camryn's motivation for advocacy work for FGLI students stems from both personal and learned experiences. Raised as the oldest child in a single parent household, Camryn was exposed to many of the challenges that accompany FGLI individuals. As she moved her way through school towards higher education, she became involved in Atlanta organizations such as Agape that strive to address inequity in underfunded educational systems and provide resources to students of marginalized groups. At Worcester, she has continued to show an interest in educational justice reforms at the classroom level by serving as a classroom advocate for STEM courses. And in the larger Worcester community, she works weekly with the OHuddle program and local schools to provide one-on-one mentoring to underrepresented and at-risk youth. She served on the executive board of the student-led organization Minorities in STEM and founded the MySTEM Lending Library, which provides greater accessibility to course resources to FGLI students. Camryn has had the opportunity to be trained in educational justice reform in Ecuador and even studied abroad in Spain. At Worcester, she has worked to make classrooms a more holistic space by serving as an advocate for FGLI students and making classrooms more personable spaces to speak about topics such as mental health. Through her time in higher education, Camryn has worked for the United States Department of Agriculture ARS unit in virology, studied mitochondrial proteins as well as the effects of trauma on Spanish English bilinguals. Without further ado, I would like to present FGLI Faces in Uncommon Spaces.
Thanks so much, Marissa. So I just want to first make sure that everyone can see my screen. Cool. Okay, so today I really want to talk about FGLI faces and uncommon spaces. And what that really means is we're looking at spaces, fields where FGLI students are underrepresented. So first, I really want to introduce myself. I think a huge theme of this entire weekend has been showing up as your full self. And I've really resonated with a lot of our other speakers this weekend as they shared their stories. I do want to put a content warning on who I am as a person, who in my story, they're labeled at the top. But yeah, I just want to spend a couple minutes here. So like Marissa said, my name is Camryn Bragg. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And I'm from Atlanta. Specifically, I'm from Southwest Atlanta, if we have any Atlanta natives in the room. I'm a Black American, I'm a woman. I am a child of a single parent household, and my family situation growing up was kind of complicated. I live with my mom, and my parents were actually never married. So I spent my entire childhood watching my mom raise me and my little sister, who is disabled, alone. She was really independent, and I thank her for all the opportunities that she's given me, and she's all the sacrifices that she's made for me to show up with you guys here today. I am from a limited income background. In that term, FGLI, I know it's very easy to associate both of them together. They do share a lot of similar challenges, but I really like to emphasize for myself, I'm personally more comfortable identifying with limited income instead of first generation, but I do use the FGLI label. I do that just as a way to honor that I'm not first generation. My mom has her bachelor's, she has higher education or degrees from higher education, and a lot of that first gen work actually fell on my grandparents. So I'm actually third generation college student. I was raised, like I said, in Atlanta. It's in the South, in a very Christian household, in a very Christian family. But me, I am actually not religious at all. And so that's something that I had to, um, learn about myself and then learn how to navigate in the world, especially in my family. Um, Being from a Black family that was religious, I think that, you know, kind of branching out on my own and kind of figuring out my religion and where I stand spiritually um, was definitely a learning curve, but it was definitely something that I was doing. I was doing alone for the most part. So I do consider myself to be very spiritual, and um, that has really influenced who I am as a person today. Like my spirituality has gotten me through a lot, which you'll soon find out about. Um, I will say I do a lot of work with mental health advocacy because I have been diagnosed with many mental health illnesses, and all of them recent. So because I'm limited income, I come from a limited income background. I actually didn't have access to like insurance one, and with that, I wasn't able to see like healthcare providers very often. So growing up, I was exposed to all of these different challenges that were affecting my mental health, and they just never got dealt with. I'm from a Black uh, religious religious family, and mental health doesn't get talked about a lot in those settings. And so that is definitely something that I've had to, that I'm really still just now getting a hang of. Kind of working through that independently of my family, getting diagnoses and things like that. Um, Mindfulness has become this huge practice in my life. And so I will say, like, mindfulness and spirituality have really picked me up from very low points in my life. So growing up, I was the oldest. I still am. I am the oldest sibling. I'm the oldest child. And that includes like in all of my cousins, my siblings, et cetera, et cetera. And so I actually ended up taking on like a lot of a parental role while my mom was at work. There was a lot of illness and death in my family, starting when I was like only 8. And so, most of my childhood, I was actually, spending part time in a hospital waiting room with, cousins, and like really taking on um, that adult responsibilities. And so I think all of that played a part in who I am now. I definitely am responsible. I definitely do like take a lot of leadership. I definitely um I feel like you can see it in a lot of what I do and who I am as a person. I don't want to spoil the rest of the presentation, but something else I enjoy doing is I really enjoy traveling. I do not travel very often, but I have had the opportunity to study abroad twice now, once in Ecuador and once in Spain, which was more recent. I really enjoy being a mentor and a role model now. That is not something that I've always enjoyed doing. It was actually to the point where I actually had to set boundaries for that. And, who I allowed to like look up to me, or like who I allowed to have expectations for me. Because as I said earlier, I was always that parental role. Like I was doubling as a parental role. I was always, as a child, like expected to take care of or set an example for someone younger than me. And so as I grew older, it was kind of like reverse growing, where I kind of was just like, I don't want to be an example for you. I just want to be a child again. Because I like felt like I had missed out on so much when I was younger. But that definitely plays a role in like my personality now. Like I've definitely found like a balance um for, serving as mentoring, like a mentor and a role model. That's definitely something that's kind of like how I decided I was going to take back my power, as like I'm gonna make myself a mentor and a role model, um, instead of someone else prescribing that to me. It Now it's definitely my choice, and I've definitely put myself in positions and different spaces where I've gotten to choose, like, okay, this is how much I want to give, and this is not what I want to be expected from me. That being said, I felt like I should put, a couple of words of just like who I am as a person. And like, I've been working on this like growth journey for so long. And so I wanted to like honor that by just listing some words that I thought described me. I would define myself as, disciplined, resilient, and having a growth mindset, which I feel like is characteristic of like a lot of first gen low income students. But I think those are the three that I'm like most proud of for myself. Um, where I'm at in life now is I'm definitely in this period of like resting. Um, I have been like go, go, go since I was very, very young because I had to be. Like I either had to have a job or I was, a caretaker for younger siblings, younger cousins. Um, and so now it's like I'm a senior in college. I'm about to graduate and I've, had all these experiences, and I feel like I've just carved out time in my life to be able to say, like, yep, I'm resting. That's what I'm deciding to do with my life right now. Definitely learning and unlearning a lot of behaviors that I learned as an FGLI student that I picked up, some of which were very useful survival skills, um, to someone who was, to the version of myself that was younger. But they're no longer needed. So I'm definitely in that period of learning and unlearning those skills. And then just healing in general. Um, Something that like a quote slash mantra that I live by now is kind of something that I had to teach myself, but it's definitely like a personal mantra, like of saying, I'm so scared to do XYZ. And then looking at myself and being like, okay, so we're going to do that anyways. Um, because I full heartedly believe in like two truths. And so, yes, I could be scared to do something, but also my fear of doing that thing does not stop me from actually doing it. So, definitely trying to live my life as best as possible by that. So that's about me. So, what are we talking about today? So, I really want this conversation to be focused around FGLI students in higher education, in STEM fields, and then also experiential learning, specifically study abroad. So, all three of those have, stigmas around the FGI students who choose to participate, who can participate, or who don't participate. And so that's what I want to focus on for today. But I want to first ask if anyone knows the percentage of undergraduate students that identify as FGLI. And you can feel free to use the chat or you can just use your voice, unmute. Anyone have a guess?
Chris said 30%, Justin said 20%, and Tanya has a question. Is this Worcester or in general, Camryn?
In general.
Okay. Um,
Okay. So I see some good answers in the chat. So yeah, as of 2015 to 2016, there were 56% of undergraduates nationally who identified as first generation. And as we've progressed, it has increased. So we would expect it to be closer to around 70% now. This data right here actually does not include limited income as well, because when we talk about FGLI students, how we define that varies, and it varies depending on institution. It varies depending on policies held federally and then at that specific institution. So when we talk about higher education, sometimes we have discrepancies on, like, first of all, who are we even counting as FGLI students, right? So I'll use Worcester as an example. At Worcester, we define an FGLI student as someone whose parent or parents, guardians, did not earn a 4-year degree. That's pretty standard nationally, from an accredited institution in the United States. So that last part is different at some institutions. The part about it being an accredited institution in the United States, so that it will affect, some population of students at different institutions. Meanwhile, we define at Worcester a limited income student as defined by Pell Grant eligibility, and that is also pretty standard around different institutions in the United States. So I want to talk about, in higher education, we know we have a population of FGLI students, but a lot of times we are not sure how to cater to them, how to serve them better, how to create equitable spaces for them so that they are, thriving, not just surviving, but thriving alongside their counterparts, right? And so I really want to emphasize that supporting FGLI students is not impossible, right? It takes effort, it takes work, it takes understanding and getting to know students individually, because as the theme of this conference suggests, there is not one monolithic way to be FGLI. Therefore, there's not this one size fits all solution at institutions. And so I kind of wanted to take y'all through my journey as a limited income student. So April 2nd, 2017, I actually visited Worcester for the first time. It was my first time on anybody's college campus, right? And this is like our arch, which is kind of our thing, but it was my very first time on anybody's college campus, right? And while this, was this grand moment in my life, it was the first time on a college campus, and it was also the same day that I committed to coming to Worcester. So, in high school, because this whole thing starts in high school. It starts before you come to college. It starts before you step foot on a college campus. And so, I had done my research, I had applied to all these different schools, and I knew that for my family, my decision was going to be based off of money. And so I knew, one, I was not going to be able to travel to different colleges and universities to get that tour, to get the works package, to like really feel comfortable at anyone's university. because my decision, one, there was no money for that, and two, my decision was going to be based off of money anyways. And so Worcester offered a good financial aid package for me as a low income student, and I was like, oh, you know what, I can swing it. I can do it for 4 years, you know. um I do also want to note that, you know, the day I drove up, because okay, so my family drives from Atlanta to Ohio, to Worcester, which is about a 10-hour drive. And the day that I came up for this visit, my family had just been evicted from our house. So, and when I say, you know, just evicted, eviction is like a process, right? Um, we got a notice, and you know, me being the oldest, I was the one that was in on that process with my mom. It wasn't my sister. It was, you know, me having to like figure out financial stuff. And meanwhile, I'm like, what, 17, 18? Um, and I kid you not, the night that we left at like 4 in the morning. We had to have all of our stuff outside of the house because they were going to come and take it. Right. So I left Atlanta with just like crap on my yard, um, because we weren't going to have access to it when I got back. And so next, you know, I had this visit with Worcester. I, to be completely honest, was not completely sold on Worcester. It's in the middle of Worcester, Ohio, which I had never heard of in my life. Um, but I applied to it and I got in, and they gave me this financial aid package that like convinced me, right? Like it was almost like, and I love Worcester now. We're not even gonna hate on Worcester, but love Worcester now. But my decision was highly based on, you know, whether or not I'd be able to afford it and still be able to send home support. And so I graduated from high school May 14th, 2017. All the while I was homeless. So we had been evicted and we were couch surfing. And whenever there wasn't space for me, my mom, and my sister, you know, I would give it to my mom and my sister. I have a car, so a lot of nights were just me in my car. But that was my experience, and I still showed up to graduation, and I, you know, still walked across the stage. Um, Next, we have October 1st, 2019. So about 2 years later, I actually declared a double major. So at this point in time, I was at Worcester. I had been at Worcester for a while, and I decided I'm declaring a double major. And you might be kind of wondering, like, how did you get from high school graduation where you're homeless to, you know, you decided you're not doing one major, but two? Um, that's my whole point here. It takes a lot of resources. It takes having a good support system, because Worcester has provided so many different avenues for support for me and has kept me motivated, right? All the while, I declared this double major, but I also had developed slash was struggling very badly with mental health. And so that's just something that was running in the background that whole time. And then finally, March 7th, 2020, I got the chance to study abroad in Spain, and I was super happy. And that's that's honestly, that was probably the turning point of my experience as FGLI, because studying abroad is not something that is offered to first generation limited income students. It's not. And you don't even see a high representation of them there. And so being able to study abroad, being able to double major when I had previously been going through all of this, having that support and encouragement to do that just kept me evolving through every situation, right? And so I think if there's one thing that we need to take out of any presentation from this weekend, but especially this one, is that FGLI students are incredibly resilient, right? Like they will work with what they're given. You can hand them a bad deck and they will create like a new deck out of it, right? And so I do have sprinkled in here some quotes from other first generation limited income students here at Wooster. And, you know, I think they're important. And so I'll read through them quickly. My mom makes $25,000 a year on a good year. She's a single mother and a waitress, but I never realized until I came to Worcester that my peers were living a much different life than me. Choosing which bill to pay every week and relying on government assistance is something normal to my family. And when I'm on campus, I feel guilty because I don't have to worry about those things while I know my family is at home. At home is. As the first one in my family to be graduating from college, I always feel like it's up to me to be financially stable and earn a salary that can support us all one day. My first year at Worcester, I avoided my professors like the plague. I had never heard of office hours or academic resources until I began to fall behind, and by then I was too scared to ask for help because I was afraid of losing my scholarships. These all all came from different FGLI students here on Worcester's campus, but they all show different effects of being FGLI and all have different issues embedded in them that as you know, as higher education, we all need to be working together to address. And so we'll kind of start with, when we recruit FGLI students, right? So from my experience, I use um, Worcester's Good Financial Aid Package, which is something that they publicly announce, right? And many schools do. So, if they are generous with their financial aid packages, that speaks directly to your first generation and limited income students. They are more inclined to apply to those schools. And so when that school accepts them, those students are counting on resources to be provided to them to help retain them. But a lot of times it won't go past the money. There's like this attitude of, we gave you a financial aid package your first year, before your first year, even, right? Like we gave you the money. What else could you need? And so a lot of what we have to do is, not just getting FGLI students to our campus, but then making our higher education institutions structurally accessible to FGLI students. So that includes, dealing with knowledge gaps and barriers that affect FGLI students way more than students who aren't. So students who come from disadvantaged or underserved communities and might have attended public schooling that didn't have the right resources, that didn't have, the AP classes, or didn't even have, the textbooks, the resources that they're expected to know once they set foot on a college campus. There has to be some sort of bridge that helps get those students to where they need to be on a college campus. That would fall under your high school experiences. That would also include internships and jobs. Usually FGLI students won't be able to do an internship or volunteer position to gain that extra experience or to gain that extra knowledge, because a lot of times running in the background, just like for me, like there was family at home. I can't just take a unpaid job, an unpaid internship, but at the same time, I'm sacrificing learning those new skills that could help push me on my career path, because I know that if I don't work a job for all these hours, I know that the rent is not getting paid. The bills are not being paid. The lights are going to get cut off. The water is going to run cold, So those are all things that we have to think about in higher education. I also want to talk about what we coin as hidden curriculum. Before I go to the next slide, I want to know, has anyone heard of that term, like hidden curriculum? Okay, I get some nods, some shakes. So hidden curriculum, right, is all the things that higher education institutions will assume that you already know coming into college. So it's, knowing what a dean is. So your dean of students office is. It's knowing how to use your dean of students office. It's knowing about the resources that you have on campus. It's knowing, there are so many different resources. Here's exactly how to use them. It's knowing how to navigate financial aid and business office relationships. It's knowing, it's knowing about different departments on campus that are made to help students, but first generation and limited income students don't automatically walk onto campus and have experience with those offices. One, either their high schools didn't have those resources. Two, they did, but a first generation limited income student is, concerned with other things. They don't have the time to participate. They don't have time. They have to go to a job after school, right? They don't go to office hours. They don't ask for help. And then also there's just like, in that community of being first generation limited income students, like I noticed this with myself too. Like there's this whole stigma about, not wanting to ask for help because you've been doing things so independently for so long. You've been doing things that seem so much bigger than education. Like, I'll be completely honest, like you've been paying bills, you've been helping your family, you've been putting food on the table. And so it feels like you're an adult. And then you get to college and it's no one's asking you to pay, besides your tuition, no one's asking you to pay rent, right? But no one's asking you to keep your family off the street. But at the same time, you don't know how to ask your professor for additional help. You don't have time to ask your professor for additional help. So I want to talk about, what are the problems on a classroom level and an institutional level, and how do we fix them, right? And so I have some ideas right here. At a classroom level, we have professors in higher education who don't share the same experiences, which is fine. But then there's no way to help share that experience with them. They don't understand, until they talk to a first generation limited income student that, I can't turn on my camera because I have family running around in the background. I'm babysitting at home right now. And these are definitely exacerbated by COVID, being at home students who are remote, being at home all the time. I don't participate in class because if I turn on my mic, you're going to hear my parents yelling at my younger siblings. We also, in the classroom, we talk a lot about equity and equality, and we know how to define them. But do we know how to implement them in a way that is right for FGLI students? I've seen so many different, Instagram is having its like infographic moment, and people are sharing like, okay, equity versus equality versus diversity versus inclusion. Very big, right? It's important to understand the differences and definitions of those. But how do we apply those, and how do we apply them to FGLI students on our campus, right? We have policies and syllabi. So, at the beginning of every semester, professors will update their syllabi and policies. Part of the problem, and what could be part of the solution too, is revising those policies and syllabi so that we're being inclusive of FGLI students who have to work 30 hours a week. Being more flexible with your deadlines, being more accommodating to circumstances that literally can sometimes just arise out of nowhere, you know? Um, I still get like texts and calls from my mom just like randomly because, the paycheck fell short this week. And it's like, oh, can you send like an extra whatever amount? Okay, well, yes, in order for me to do that, but I have to go pick up some shifts somewhere, right? And it was not planned. And it's not planned, but it's essential. It's gonna happen because if it's gonna keep my family off the street. Um, we also we also have to think about how do we increase visibility of tools and resources. So I mentioned earlier that a lot of FGLI students won't necessarily know how to use resources provided to them. So that could be like office hours, professors, TAs. At Worcester, we have what we call zone interns, which are specific for STEM fields. But how do we make those services more accessible, more for FGLI students? Like I was talking with a friend of mine about this, and we were saying how if you come to Worcester's campus, and I'm sure this is, the same for most college campuses, if you come to our campus and you walk down the halls or you go to one of our restrooms, you will know how to report a sexual assault case, a sexual harassment allegation, because we have posters, like 4 per bathroom. So you will know how to navigate that system because it's accessible. And so we were brainstorming, we were like, what if we just made like office hours and, the financial aid and business office, like relationships, what they do, how they interact with students. What if we made that information so much more apparent and visible just on our campuses? Because it should be as important. It shouldn't be like we have to go search or we have to go hunt or you have to have had like some previous knowledge to know that that even exists. They're available for students to use, and I feel like they should just be, campuses should be transparent about those. Institutionally speaking, definitely learning how to challenge financial aid policies, business office policies. A lot of them just nationally will gatekeep FGLI students. And what will happen is most schools and universities, they have, in order to register for classes, you have to meet this threshold of, on your balance for tuition in order to register, in order to do this, that, and the third. But and they hold every single student across campus to the same standard. But the fact is, not every single student or family, whoever's paying tuition, is at the same financial aid level. So learning how to challenge those and really self-advocate in those areas on campus as well are important. I also want to talk briefly about bridge programs that would really address, knowledge gaps. So students who come in from underserved communities coming to college campus and being like, okay, you didn't get this training in high school, totally fine. Here's what you need to catch you up. So next, we have this section on study abroad, right? Study abroad is this amazing experience that FGLI students are not seen in. So my experience, I mentioned earlier, I've had 2. I studied abroad in Ecuador, and then I studied abroad in Spain last year. This helps so much with independence. It helps with, your knowledge of the world. It helps with career development, personal development, right? In Ecuador, right, back in 2016, I was working with school-age children on, bringing better technology, better resources to their school. And I've continued doing that same work all of these years. And so being able to have these experiential learning experiences are so crucial to anyone's development, but we don't see FGLI students there. Partially because there's this idea that FGLI students can't or should not study abroad. So, people think first generation, people think limited income, and they're like, oh, no money? You shouldn't you be like working a job to send money home? Shouldn't you do this, that, and third? And in some cases, that's true. I do have to send money home. I do have to provide family support, but that should not stop me from having these experiences that other students are getting to have and that are propelling them, that look good on a resume. These experiences literally propel students through, college, through their careers. And so, not Chris. So I definitely think, when you search like study abroad programs for FGLI students, right? Like nothing comes up, because why would an FGLI student want to go abroad? Why would they want to have that experience? On our campus, I was lucky enough to go to study abroad through Wooster, because Wooster has good policies that are agreeable with a lot of FGLI student experiences. So we have this program where your financial aid package will literally follow you to your country. And it depends on what country you choose and the program you choose, but that is the only reason why I was able to swing study abroad. And so I would encourage other universities, if they don't already have something similar, to also adopt a similar policy that Worcester has. So I wanted to ask y'all, first, what are some things on your campuses that help FGLI students have these life-changing experiences? We'll start there. Speaking about study abroad.
So, Camryn, I'll say at my institution, we don't have semesters abroad. We have classes that have abroad components. And so they are more limited in scope, the trips, but they're covered by grant. So if the student wants to participate, it's actually a grant-based funded program with an application that is financial need-based. But that way the student can be in the program. They're limited in scope, but it does give an opportunity for students to have a bit of an abroad experience. Now, again, we're primarily a community college, so it's not a university type environment, but that, that's one way that we try to help. Now, of course, in these COVID times, all those programs have been placed on severe restriction and hold. But that is sort of that's our style and our approach.
That's so cool. So students actually go abroad like for those classes?
So like, for example, you'll spend, if it's a spring class, during spring break there will be an extended trip that is usually over the spring break week plus a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
That is the trip component of the study abroad class. So maybe you're focused on Latin American culture, and the trip to South America or to Central America is part of that experience.
That is so cool. I think Worcester has something kind of similar. We have these Worcester treks. I have personally never been on one, but they take place over like a break period. Anyone else? So what ways can your campus or campuses in general show up better for FGLI students in this area? Assuming that the resources are there. I really like the idea of having financial aid packages, and then also having sponsored programs or like partnered programs. That's something that Worcester does here, to give anyone ideas. Thanks for the link, Daniel. Chris?
It's more of a it's less of a like a identifying a thing that they could show better, or more of like just a question. Because I started typing out this thing like 4 slides ago, and I'm trying to incorporate this to like this slide right here. So I'm a TA right now, and like back when I was a student, I was comfortable enough reaching out if I needed like informal accommodations for like turning things in late because of work or things like that. And now I've had some students reach out to me as well, like they're working during class, and so like, can I have an extra day to turn in my assignment? Easy, fine. I'm wondering how many students aren't not reaching out to me, and like how to like at the beginning of the semester, professor allowed me to introduce myself, and so I led off with the fact that I'm like FGLI. I get it. Like if you are as well, then like feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to. I think it was a blanket. Feel free to reach out to me. I should have probably said like reach out to me if you need like accommodations or whatever. But also wasn't sure if the professor would be okay with me saying that. That's something I could have asked him directly beforehand. So I'm trying to be like how to be as supportive of a TA as possible. And I feel like a lot of these questions can be applied to faculty. How can I be a more supportive faculty member? And then you said a phrase that like flipped a switch in my brain. You said like financial aid follows you abroad at Worcester, and I'm trying to think, would it be? I can't tell if it's a good thing or a bad thing to have financial aid also follow you into some sort of like academic resources office, like how with the disability office might allow students to go through that to request sort of like accommodations that way. Could if students don't feel comfortable approaching a professor, would they feel more comfortable approaching an academic resources office and they liaise with professors, or would that just be an additional layer that could cause more difficulties? But either way, it's more just questions in my head about how to be a better like TA and by extension a better educator.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all so important. And for study abroad specifically, when I say, our financial aid follows us abroad, I don't see, I feel like now that I'm thinking about this, we should maybe take inventory of the FGLI students who are participating in our study abroad like offices. I don't think Worcester does that, but it's noted in my head now. So someone will be getting an email. And I was attracted to our study abroad program, right? Because they said that. So I don't know if other students also feel the same way, but when they said, whatever you get for financial aid normally during a semester, if your study abroad program costs less than Worcester tuition, which most of them do, surprisingly, it's covered. Worcester will just pay it using your financial aid, right? So Worcester paid my study abroad and then gave me refund because there was some left over, right? And so that whole idea, like having that, made study abroad more accessible for me, because if I had to pay however much my study abroad program was out of pocket, it wouldn't have happened. It would not have happened at all. So I think having, policies that are forward thinking for FGLI students across different academic resource offices, I think once it's advertised correctly, once you're getting that out to the students that need to see it, it will eventually draw in FGLI students. To your point about being a TA and like getting, students who might need help but don't know how to reach out. I also have that very similar issue. I'm a ZI for a biology class. I was ZI this semester and then also last semester. And I have, I've seen students struggling and I'm like, I want nothing more than to be like, come talk to me. I'll send them like emails, I'll send them like Teams messages. I'm like, hey, trying to like make myself as accessible as possible. But it really ends up like you can lead a horse to a water, but you can't make them drink, right? And so, I think for that, you just have to continuously push like resources, right? Like whether they respond to your email or not, like continuously do it. And if they get to a point where they feel like, okay, this has gotten so bad that I need to, or if they just, have, maybe they talk to someone else and they're like, oh, you use that? Oh, maybe I should too, right? At least you will have done your part to like provide them with resources that they need and like point them in the right direction. I also think we need to emphasize more like community building for FGLI students. Daniel, yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Camryn? So you talk about your experience going abroad, and I think it's really awesome that you had that. I wonder what your family's response was, because you also talked about your mom sort of picking up the phone and saying, I need some support this week.
Mm-hmm.
Was there fear? Was there concern about your being out of the country for an extended period of time? And how did you navigate that?
Yes. It caused me so much anxiety before I left, because when I tell you that, like, I was researching how to get a work visa in Spain before I left. I was like, I have never not worked. Like, I have never not worked, right? Like, however old you have to be in Georgia to work. I think it's like 16. I have never not worked. And so, everyone's telling me, my mom is so supportive. She's like, she wants me to have like life experiences, right? So she's very supportive. She's like, no, go do it. Like, learn, be a global citizen. But like, I think it was more me. It was more me than her, And so I actually, I didn't get support from my family. I didn't even ask. I went to Spain with literally $0, 100 euro, which is nothing, right? I didn't ask for anything from my family. That is where support from Wooster helped the most. So them paying for my study abroad and then me getting back a refund check, I had my mom deposit it. And so then I had like cushion, right? So I had like an extra, like, I think my refund check was somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 from Wooster. That was on like a wing and a prayer. Right? Like when I tell you I went to Spain with 100 euro and $0 American dollars, like 100% that is what happened. And so Worcester came in clutch. They gave me that. And so that I knew while I was abroad, I have to budget, right? So I have to budget, like, yes, I'm going to try to have as much fun as I can. Like just being here is an experience for me. But I also knew some of this is going in savings for a rainy day when my family hits me up and is like, hey, we really need something right now. So I did my best to like take part in like the activities through my study abroad program that were included in tuition. So that had already been paid. So a couple of those were like trips to Portugal, trips around like Europe or whatever. And obviously all of it got canceled because of COVID, but I did, what I could, but I knew, if Worcester gave me $4,000, okay, 1,000 of that is spending money for me. And then 3,000 of it is going in a savings account for my family. And that is how I navigated that. I do realize we're like running short on time. So, and I wanted to talk about STEM really fast. I'll keep it short, sweet, and to the point. So we have these things called efficacy, right? So efficacy is the ability to produce the desired or intended result. And so students have sense of efficacy in them, right? And so we have self-academic, we have self-social and coping efficacy. and all of them deal with something a little bit different. So self-academic is a student's belief in their ability to successfully execute course-based activities and assignments. Self-social is the ability to build meaningful and productive social relationships with faculty and mentors and peers. And coping is the ability to overcome contextual barriers. So just to put this in context, when we talk about self-academic, that is how a student thinks they are able to complete assignments, right? So, using my experience of having to work like 30 plus hours a week, my self-academic efficacy was a little bit low because I was like, am I really going to be able to actually complete this stuff? Self-social is your ability to have social relationships, right? Most of the time, first generation limited income students, their social relationships are the first thing to go, right? If I'm working 30 plus hours a week and then I still have school and I still have schoolwork, my social skills they go out first. Just because they're more important, they're bigger things to worry about. And so that includes like faculty mentorship and peers. But what we know is that having those relationships, having social relationships, having like mentorship is huge. And it moves you forward through your career. But it's not something that FGLI students are able to focus on as much. And then able to overcome barriers. That is, I don't want to say your confidence, but like the confidence that you hold of, I can get through this. I can get through this very tough moment. And the thing is this goes for anyone. The more, negative things you've had happen to you and the less you're able to get through them, your coping efficacy goes down. Your ability to think and say, I think I can make it through this. I have the tools I need to make it through this moment goes down. And so when we talk about STEM, we see a reduced participation of FGLI students in STEM fields. It's one of those things. It's almost like the era 404. Like you Google STEM and FGLI students and it's not found, right? Like, and the thing is, it's not that they're not there. I'm in STEM, right? It's that we don't talk about it. No, talking about your family's financial situation, your financial situation is still taboo. But in STEM field specifically, like it's expensive, right? It's expensive to be in STEM. It is a rigid curriculum and it's not made to accommodate FGLI students who have to work all the time or, all of their money, all of their funds are being sent home. All of that is going to affect those three types of efficacy, right? So those are things that we have to think about. We have to think about, how we design our STEM curriculums. At Wooster, my major for BCMB is 16 credits, I think. That's 4 classes per semester, a little bit less. It's less than that. It's four classes if I did 4 semesters. But of course, that's all spread out. And that's like lab classes and all this stuff. But we have to think about, if we want FGLI students to participate, how do we get the same material to them, but maybe in a different way, right? And I think COVID has helped a lot with that, switching to virtual settings. Our classes are online and they're recorded, right? And I think a lot of the country is doing that. A lot of universities are doing that as well. So this is my last, point. What can we do, to help create a more inclusive space for FGLI students in STEM? I am so lucky to go to Wooster where we have SSI, which is our STEM Success Initiative. And it's literally an advisory board of faculty and staff that meet to help underrepresented students thrive in STEM, right? And I have enjoyed getting to talk and like sit in with them on their meetings, right? They want to listen to student experiences. They come to events like this, right? And so getting faculty and staff at your universities and colleges on board is the first step, right? Because once students start to see like, oh, my faculty member like recognizes that FGLI students exist, it suddenly begins to feel like, oh, I am a little less invisible. And so that's how I've built like most of my relationships with my faculty is, you know, they've shown up to events like this, or they've asked about trainings for this. And, you know, they bring it in, they mention it. It'll be like this like smallest thing they'll mention in class, but it'll like prompt me to like ask them more about what they meant, or ask or feel comfortable to share like my experience with them in office hours. Right. Um, just being open to listening and learning about different FGLI experiences. It's not a monolith. I have my own story. Other people have their own. Um, there's not one size fits all solution. So it depends on the students you're working with at that point in that time. I really appreciated Wooster for having a space that we called the Plaid program. It doesn't exist anymore, not in its full capacity, but I really appreciated Wooster for having that. It was the first time in my 4 years here that there had been a space for FGLI students to come together and like build a community. I got to meet different FGLI students. We like sat down, we like chit-chatted, you know, and it was just fun. And I realized like there were so many more people on our campus than I thought going through very similar things as I was. Lending libraries, highly recommend. And then also just being flexible and understanding in policies in classroom, institutionally, if you have that level of authority on your campus. Since we are over time, I'm not going to do the discussion questions, but I would like to thank everyone for coming. Yeah. If you have any questions, I'll stick around for questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Camryn. This was a really great presentation. You can also talk to Camryn in our Discord server. I'll be linking that in the chat. But yeah, as Camryn said, she'll stick around for a little bit. But feel free to chat with her in Discord throughout the rest of the weekend. And yeah, thank you so much for coming, y'all.
Thanks for coming. Why does Justin look so confused?
I have something typed out, but I'm debating on whether I send it or I just, just ask you it later.
What is it? If it's inappropriate, you need to just ask me later.
No, it's not.
Okay,
There's an
what is
actual
it?
question, but everybody's left, so there's no point.
Okay. Oh
yeah.
my God.
I'll just ask you later.
All right. See ya.
See ya, Camryn.